All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Off and Turn One podcast. Episode 4. Spring is finally here. I know it's like 15 days away or whatever it is, but it's close enough. Alongside, of course, Gary, as always. We have a special guest tonight, AJ, filling in for Joe. And we have a new addition to the podcast debuting this week, even though you might have seen him Saturday on the special podcast episode for Indy, Scott Ramler. Hello, people.
Hello.
What up?
So, we had the first Formula One race this week. We had Vegas and NASCAR. We've got IndyCar coming up this weekend. We've got a lot to dive into here. So I think we should just get right into it. What do you guys say?
Let's do it.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Well, Scott, you're up. You are our Formula One go-to guy. You're the expert. Pull a Robin Miller on us and drop a bomb. Let's hear it.
I don't know if I'd consider myself an expert, but I've definitely started watching them pretty closely after Red Bull announced a completely different design philosophy for their 2024 car, showing much higher shoulders going down the engine cover, a complete cooling system overhaul, and a lot of it using what were thought to be failed ideas from the Mercedes Zero Pod concept that they ran for last year as well as 2022. Was really interested to see how that was going to turn out. But let's get right into it. I had stuff here written for FP1, FP2. I think I did a little bit too much research, so I think we're going to start off with Q1. One of the major notes that's been going on in Formula One right now is Alpine losing a couple of their directors, some very, very openly shown issues going on behind the scenes there at the French team. As far as we can see, they have nothing to show for all the changes and the backing that they've received. Notably, I believe it was with Ryan Reynolds and a couple other major TV and movie stars. Q1 saw both of their cars getting knocked out, along with the newly rebranded Kick Sauber team with Valtteri Bottas and Guan Yu Zhou.
What were they last year?
They were.
I was having a really big issue. Like, are there two Red Bull teams?
There are two Red Bull teams, and there have been for a while. They've just had different names. AlphaTauri is now RB, as they're being called, but they haven't really given a finite name for the team. So it can be RB, Visa RB. There's like 3 other sponsors that they have in there. It's almost an anime title of a name for a race team. Just way too much going on there. But yeah, one of the highlights of Q1 was 7-time champ Lewis Hamilton coming in at the last possible second, had a time good enough for P17 at the time, had 1 lap to get it all done. He ended up jumping up the order to about 9th or 10th and bumping out his former teammate in Valtteri Bottas. Q2 had a really, really close race for getting it into Q3. Had 3 cars, 11th through 13th in the order, were separated by less than 1/10 of a second, and Yuki Tsunoda, one of the RB drivers that with the team we were just talking about, missed a Q3 appearance by 7 thousandths of a second, 0.007. During Q2,
but
oh yeah,
that would suck.
Yeah, really, really close. It was also in this session that the fastest lap turned during this trip to Bahrain was set by Ferrari's Charles Leclerc. Punched in a 129.165, but Unfortunately, running the fastest lap in Q2 doesn't guarantee you the pole. Who gets the pole in Q3? Who else?
Max Verstappen.
Who else but Max Verstappen? Let's be honest.
Who else
Adrian,
but Quagmire?
Yeah, Adrian Newey designed car, Max Verstappen behind the wheel. I don't think we're going to see them going anywhere anytime soon. One of the other stories to come out of Q3 was Nico Hulkenberg kind of coming out of nowhere in the Haas entry and swinging P10 when everybody was expecting them to be fighting at the back with Alpine and everyone else.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, on to the race. Season starts. How long do you think it took for there to be carbon fiber flying in the air?
Turn 1.
I was going to say, probably turn 1.
Yeah, turn 1, lap 1. Less than 30 seconds into the new season for car-to-car contact to be made. Lance Stroll took a quick spin and recovered after contact from Hulkenberg, who made a late lunge to the inside and put his dead center of his nose right up under the right rear tire of Lance's. For the rest of the race was actually surprisingly clean. There were some good battles on track. The only real incidents of note was when Bottas was forced to sit in the pits for nearly 53 seconds. That is an eternity in Formula One, especially with no kind of lucky dog system. For those of you that are familiar with NASCAR. And another thing we don't see in other forms of motorsports, well, we're not supposed to see because most of them have it written in the rule book, was Yuki Tsunoda, who was having a fantastic battle with Magnussen for P12 in the closing laps of the race, got told by his team to switch positions with his teammate. And the two of them ended up completely losing Magnussen in the process because as soon as they swapped, they ended up getting the blue flags for Max Verstappen lapping them. Yeah, Yuki was absolutely incensed, and I think his performance he put on may not win Radio Sweetheart for the F1 series, but it's definitely going to be up there.
Yeah, definitely up there for sure.
And I said it before, Max Verstappen was leading at that point in the race. He led from lights to flag for his 8th consecutive full-length GP win. And the pole earlier was his 33rd pole of his career. Won by 22 seconds against his teammate to lock out the 1-2 with Perez.
That's sad. I thought for the most part, outside of the first lap and then being held on pit road for 50 some odd seconds, 53 seconds, kind of boring. Like,
it was,
I was talking to Gary. I was sleeping.
I thought we were going to have a safety car at one point with the Williams car because he was stopped up there. I want to say it was turn 1 for a solid couple minutes trying to get that car refired. I thought we were going to have something interesting there with the safety car, but evidently he was able to get that car refired and back to the track. So we didn't get to see one of those.
Yeah, from what I saw, they had some sort of electrical issue. He pulled long into one of the corners, and they ended up having to retire the car later on. So the 53-second pit stop by Bottas didn't net him last, but it hurts to be the last of the cars that are still running.
Yes, absolutely, for sure.
But for your race results, we'll go ahead and go through. You have the Red Bull teammates, Max Verstappen and Checo Perez. P3, you had Ferrari's Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc following him closely in 4th. We could be seeing another great battle for Ferrari and Red Bull to go for the constructors title again, assuming Ferrari doesn't shoot themselves in the foot with a double barrel shotgun like they have the past 2 years.
Yep.
All right. P5, we had Russell. P6, Norris. P7, 7-time champion Lewis Hamilton. P8, Oscar Piastri. P9, Fernando Alonso. P10, Lance Stroll. Going on through the rest, we had Joe in 11th, Magnussen 12th, Daniel Ricciardo in 13th, Tsunoda 14th, Albon 15th, Hulkenberg 16th, Ocon 17th, Gasly 18th, Bottas 19th, and bringing up the rear, the American Logan Sargent.
As always, bringing up the rear.
Yeah,
Hey,
unfortunately.
somebody needs to watch their sixes out there.
That's right.
I don't know if I'd want to do it on a racetrack, but
Right. Well, I did see earlier this week, Joe did drop something in our group chat, which I hope, his personal issues get resolved very quickly because they know he's got a lot going on right now. That's why he's not here tonight. But he posted to us that Saudi Arabia unveiled plans for their new racing circuit, a 20-story high opening corner. Like, I don't know if you saw this, Scott.
I have, and I was going over it with Joe. He actually sent this to me personally, so you didn't see my feedback on it. But it's a Tilka track. I mean, turn one, assuming this is going to be a counterclockwise run track. Turn one is exactly like Coda. Very fast, uphill, at least from what I could gather looking at the lights and the positioning of a lot of the barriers.
Severely uphill, too, it looks like.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
if you've seen Coda, Coda's not anything to scoff at. That turn
That's a
one
hill.
hill is insane.
Yeah, it's like Road America, but faster. With Road America, at least with their hill, you kind of ease into it. Road America or the Coda, it's like, boop, here you go.
See, this looks like they're going to be going fast enough to jump the damn thing.
Yeah.
It kind of gave me Mario Kart vibes. I'm not gonna lie.
Rainbow Road.
Yeah, it's a Rainbow Road with all the colors in the picture. I mean, turn one is clearly uphill, diminishing clearance, left hand hairpin, followed by a sweeping right hand corner. And instead of going through the S's and through their little complex, you go straight on almost as if you're going to the backstretch of Coda.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say a lot of Coda vibes here. These first 2-3 corners here, minus the S's, like you're talking about.
I mean, even the S's. The only difference is the S's were, and I really hate to generalize like this, but for people to kind of get the idea, instead of Coda's S's, they start off wide and then narrow to slow the cars down. In this case, they've done the exact opposite. It starts with the tight S's and then widens to go down yet another straight to what looks like a double apex left-hander that opens up on exit. Similar to criminy, I'd say Hockenheimring.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah.
Just so many, I don't want to call them tried and true because they just don't work in every instance. We don't want to be seeing the same corner complexes just in different locations.
Right. Well, and I thought there's actually a rumor that I heard earlier this week, or later this week, rather, I want to say within the last day or two, that Doug Bowles is pushing to see if he can get Formula One to come back to the Speedway. And I mean, there's no other road course like IMS's road course. Maybe I'm being a little bit biased, but you really don't see their combination of turns anywhere like the rest of the Formula One circuit, in my opinion.
Right. If you look at what makes a Formula One circuit great, now don't get me wrong, I like Coda. I like a lot of the Tilka built tracks. But when you go and look at all of these tracks side by side, you start to say, okay, he's used this corner complex in Turkey, the Korean track, and at Coda.
Almost kind of like the 1.5 mile cookie cutters that we saw in the late 90s, early 2000s boom.
Very much so. So it's like, oh, we're getting another 1.5 mile tri-oval track. fantastic. What makes it different? And then NASCAR went and screwed up every 1.5-mile track on the circuit, thinking they were going to make it better.
Yeah.
We were complaining about a problem that didn't exist. We didn't realize what we were doing as NASCAR fans.
That is true. Sometimes the fans, they shoot themselves in the foot sometimes.
No kidding.
Really, it's not a matter of that there's too many 1.5 miles, which I mean there probably were, but they definitely could have changed the schedule and gone to some different venues, or go back to venues like they went with Wilkesboro, and hopefully they go back to Rockingham. But that is a discussion for another podcast. If we could do a
Probably
whole
in a
podcast
couple
in
weeks,
itself,
months, it'll be here.
probably during the Olympic break, we could probably talk about that.
I forgot we're doing that this year.
We do have that this year.
Ugh.
So we do have our question of the week. What series are you looking forward to as we get the season underway? It's kind of been a slow start. You had IMSA back in January, but they kind of took this long hiatus, and they're getting ready to come back in a couple weeks to Sebring. But now that NASCAR's had a couple weeks under its belt, IndyCar is about to start this weekend. Which is there a particular series that you guys are looking forward to this year?
I'm very excited. I'm looking forward at least to this weekend and seeing what this new short track package is going to be like in NASCAR, because they've been hyping it up like it's supposed to fix
the problem.
We've heard this before many times. But yeah, outside of all this racing series that we have right now, that's what I'm looking forward to the most, because after watching Bahrain, we're gonna get exactly what we've
thing.
Yeah.
The last
Max Verstappen parade.
Yeah, that's what I call Formula One. So
Scott, what I told Gary earlier when we were talking, I go, I kind of watched it. I saw the start and
he saw
it's over.
I saw them get spun, and then he saw Verstappen taking the checkered flag. That's all he saw.
Yeah,
I woke up to the national anthem.
Formula One fans finally understand what we like, why Americans joke about NASCAR. Oh, they're making a left turn. Go take a nap. Go do what you want. Wake back up. They'll still be making a left turn.
Yeah.
Come back in 20 minutes. You won't miss a fucking thing.
Watch the start of the F1 race.
Right.
Max Verstappen's in the lead. Go to sleep. You won't miss a damn thing.
That's right.
But personally, I'm looking forward to seeing the Australian V8 supercars.
That's always a very
again.
underrated series. Yeah, I love.
Where do you watch that?
So you can watch on YouTube, actually. YouTube, they're on like their YouTube channel. They show their races live. If you're subscribed, I think, or something like that. Peyton has all the info on that. He's like the Super 8 car nerd when it comes to.
I feel like Peyton's probably got a bunch of bootleg of old races too.
Oh, he probably does. Yeah.
I will say, as a series, the Australian V8 supercars have marketed their product fantastically for anybody that is maybe overseas. It's accessible. It's easily accessible.
It's very true.
And the content that they provide is so much more than just the series.
Right.
Like, you get their historics races, you get which when I thought, okay, Australian historics races, old cars going around the track with guys trying not to break them. No.
They actually race them. I saw a little clip they had at what was it, Bathurst, where they had those cars from probably, I want to say 70s or 80s era in the rain, side by side, not giving a damn inch.
Yeah, they go out there with cars that would be considered classics by any standard and just beat the ever-loving shit out of them. There's no other way to put it. It is a fantastic watch. Just for that series alone, I think would be worth the money for the subscription you have to pay for their content.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. Well, we did have a couple of comments from that Facebook post that I did post about our question of the week. Nate Orlowski says he's been getting into IMSA a lot more lately. So he said he's looking to go to his first race at potentially VIR this year for IMSA.
Ooh, that'll be an interesting place. That's one track I have not been to. lot of elevation changes to look forward to.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
a lot of high speed areas in that track. You find a good spot to camp on that track, there likely won't be a bad spot to be there.
No, absolutely not. Jake Zito was saying that he would have to say IMSA just due to driving the GTP more nowadays. He really likes looking forward to the road to the prototype racing and the road racing, and he's also looking forward to the global endurance series and other endurance series. So, and of course, Jake has also been dipping his toes lately in the iRacing waters for oval racing. And he says he's looking forward to doing some of that this year on the sim as well, and maybe watching an oval race or two with us on Sundays. We'll just have to see how that goes. So
join the watch party, pull up a beer.
That's what we do every Sunday, and I know this Sunday's gonna be packed for us because we're gonna be watching that IndyCar opener and the NASCAR race at Phoenix. So a lot of good things to look forward to as far as that goes. I did leave a comment myself. And I genuinely meant this. I haven't really watched anything outside of NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA. Those are kind of my three that I watch. But if there's a series I want to be a little more intentional with this year, is watching the Cars Tour. I don't know if it's because of the Dale Earnhardt Jr., Harvick, Burton, Justin Marks effect, but I love watching after watching a couple of Cars Tour races and seeing those late model stocks around the short tracks around the southeastern portion of the country. I'm really looking forward to watching the Cars Tour. It seems like they always put on a really good show. But and then Mick Olofsson also mentioned Wissota local dirt track racing.
Which, please go support your local tracks.
Yes, absolutely. We are advocates around that about that around here. I always go to IMS. That's like your big like ballpark. Okay, like if you're going to watch an MLB game,
Yankee Stadium.
You go to Yankee Stadium, you go to Fenway, you go to IMS, right? That's where you go to support your big track. But every once in a while, I like hanging out over at IRP. I like going over there to their oval side. I know they've got the drag strip and everything, but I do like going over to watch their oval racing. The Speedrome, Circle City Raceway, the little dirt track they got over there. Anderson. So a lot of good stuff around here in the state of Indiana as far as racing goes. That is for sure. But
my apologies
definitely
for
go
that.
and support your local short track. What was that, Scott?
My apologies if my phone just broke through that.
Oh,
nope.
No, we didn't hear you.
Nope, I have noise cancellation on.
So there we go. Perfect.
Tries to cover your butts just in case you don't have it on.
That's right. So we are going to segue into the IndyCar segment. Normally Joe covers the IndyCar stuff, but since he's not here, he just gave me the notes to go over. So here we are. Callum Ilott will fill in for David Malukas at St. Pete. I think that broke last week or earlier this week. It was kind of talked about. It is now confirmed. David Malukas will be missing his first race for Arrow McLaren, and Callum Ilott's going to fill in. He was driving for Juncos Hollinger the last couple of years. He got booted for Roman Grosjean, so now he's filling in for Malukas until he's back on his feet. Dale Coyne Racing finally, the week of the race, announced their driving lineups for 2024. So we got that going for us. They've got the 18 and the 51. Of course, we know the 51's a partnership with Rick Ware. But the 18 car, they are running the full schedule with two drivers. They've got Jack Harvey for 14 races and Nolan Siegel for the other 4, including the Indianapolis 500. So right now, Jack Harvey does not have a ride for the Indy 500. That could change, though, because the 51 will have an opening because it's not really announced yet. It's going to be multiple drivers in that 51 machine for Rick Ware Racing, Dale Coyne Racing. It is confirmed Colin Brown or Colin Braun. I don't know how you pronounce his last name. I've heard it was Brown like the color. I've also heard Braun. He is going to be driving that 51 at St. Pete this weekend and Thermal Club. According to the article that I read on racer.com, he's going to be there on an as needed basis. So basically, as long as it doesn't conflict with his IMSA schedule and his other road racing that he does, he would be open to doing more races in IndyCar. So we got that going for us. But as far as who else will race, who knows? I'm now willing to push this rumor. Maybe Callum Ilott will maybe take that 51 for the Indy 500. Who knows? It all comes down, as you know, gentlemen, money talks in IndyCar and really motorsports in general these days. But I'm kind of curious to see who would you like to see in the Rick Ware Dale Coyne Racing number 51 throughout the rest of the year, outside of really Colin Brown, and that's all they've got announced so far.
Throw Fernando Alonso back in one of those things.
You know, it'd be interesting. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think you're going to be pulling a double at Monaco and Indianapolis.
Yeah,
you can't make it halfway around the world in that short of time.
He would have to be really pissed off with Aston Martin like he was with McLaren in order for that to happen, or really just Honda in general at that time. But
you know, you mentioned an F1 driver, and let me just check to make sure. No, never mind. He was in the race, so he's probably racing. I was going to say Ricardo.
That would have been an interesting pick. Now he was like a relief driver / thrown in after the other guy got fired last year, and Ricardo took a spot. So that could be a guy if RB's not committed to him. Hey, make the trip around the world.
I would love for that to happen, but Daniel Ricciardo was actually asked that question: would he ever race in the Indy 500? And he was quoted as saying, in quotes, "Fuck that, ovals scare me."
I think I remember seeing that.
You know, I can understand that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, especially in an IndyCar, because if you get those things backwards or sideways, you're flipping. I mean, that's how it was in the old days anyway, and a little bit in this car to an extent. I don't blame them. I would be too.
I mean,
honestly.
now all you got to worry about is a tire going flying.
Yeah.
And there it goes.
I mean, in qualifying trim, they're going 240, almost 250 miles an hour into 1 and 3. I mean, I don't blame them for being a little bit scared to drive ovals in an IndyCar. Don't blame them at all.
Guys, in the chat, let us know who you would want to see take that Rick Ware car to the Indianapolis 500. I'm curious.
Bring him out of retirement.
Jesus. Didn't he already do an Indy 500?
He did with the Andretti's back in 2014. I think if we really wanted to stir the shit pot, let's put Kyle Busch in that car.
Isn't it a little too late?
I mean, the open test is next month. He could do the rookie test the first day of the open test. We've seen that done before. It's not unprecedented for IndyCar to do that. Is
Larson doing this year or next year?
He's doing the next 2 years. So he's starting this year and next year. It'll be the 17 both years with Arrow McLaren and HendrickCars.com, which I've heard that Hendrick is actually very heavily involved with that effort. Like Chad Knaus is there all the time.
That can be dangerous.
So I think he's going to win in the next 2 years at the Indianapolis 500. Make no mistake about it. This year, I could see him kind of putting a similar effort that Kurt Busch did when he ran in the 500. I think Kurt was like top 10 all day and ended up finishing like 5th or 6th in that race in 2014. That was my first Indy 500 that I went to, by the way. I think Ryan Hunter-Reay won that race.
So, stupid question, which probably not stupid. We see NASCAR drivers, active NASCAR drivers, go from 500 to 600. Have we ever seen IndyCar driver go 500 to 600?
So even though he's more known for his NASCAR career, the answer is yes. John Andretti, in 1994, he didn't have a full-time NASCAR gig at the time. He was more doing IMSA, IndyCar stuff. He did the Indianapolis 500 that day, came over and did the Coke 600 later that night.
Because it feels like it's been like a NASCAR driver going and doing both. It's not really we see an IndyCar driver coming to NASCAR and doing both.
With today's day and age, with the charter system, I just don't see that being much of a thing. Of course, unless it's like a 2311 or Legacy Motor Club or RFK or, Trackhouse opening a third entry for those guys. Hey, you want to come run the Indianapolis 500? Well, why don't you come over here to NASCAR and run the 600? Do the double with Kyle, see how good you do. But, I mean, really, unfortunately, the all-star car that we've seen from 2 out of the last 3 organizations that have entered an extra entry, mostly been on with superstars that have road racing experience. So, kind of hard telling. as far as that would go. I never say never, but I would love to see a guy like Connor Daly get a 500 ride and a 600 ride. I'd love to see him try to do both.
That would be cool.
But I just don't see that happening. But I could see like Marco or Connor Daly try that.
I love seeing how happy Connor was to get that Daytona 500. He was
just
so
to start
happy.
the race. Yeah. He was very. I think he was more really relieved too about making that race. So I did look up an old Indy 500. This year is from 1983. I just happened to look at the starting grid for that race. Yes, Chip Ganassi did run in that race in 1983. Started on the inside of row 6 that day. I wanted to find a funny name in here. So there's a guy. Here's a guy. I sound like what's his name on Sunday Night Football? Jerry Sneva. Didn't make the race, but he's on the list. Replaced Dick Ferguson. I don't know.
Dick.
Those names sound funny to me. I don't know why, but they both failed to make the show.
There's a lot of cars that failed to qualify.
Yes, there was a lot of entries at this point before the split in the 80s and 90s. It's like entering the Daytona 500. I mean, there would be like 40, 50, 60 cars that would try the Indianapolis 500. There was a couple of Indy 500s back in the day where it would be 33 entries and you could fill the field twice with how many entries there were. And same with the Daytona 500. I think in the 80s, early 90s, they had like 50 entries or something like that, 80 entries. I know the first Brickyard 400, the first Cup race at IMS, there were over 90 entries for that 43 car field. You could fill the field twice for that race.
At that point, you ought to just hold a 50-mile consolation race. Cautions don't count. Just send everybody out there.
I kind of thought that they would have done something like they did with Daytona and doing maybe like a Freedom 100 instead of like the duels where they do 125 mile, 150 mile races.
Yeah.
Or maybe they would have done like 40 laps, do kind of like a Freedom 100 type deal.
I don't hate that. That actually sounds pretty cool.
But they didn't do that 30 years ago. They just had I think it was like a 2-week event. I'd have to look more into details of the 94 Brickyard. We'll talk about that as we get closer to that particular date coming up. But I think they had like day 1 and day 2 of qualifying where like day 1, you set the 43 car field, but it locked in like the top 25 or top 30 or something. And then they would have day 2 and that would lock in the rest of the spots. But I'd have to look into that a little bit more. But interesting. Also, Al Unser Jr. was a rookie that year in 1983, finished 10th. He won Rookie of the Year. And that was in a Cosworth too. And get this, guys, only 3 cars finished on the lead lap for that race in 1983.
Wow, Rick Mears.
Yeah, he was the last one to finish on the lead lap that day. Tom Sneva won the race for March. Penske swept 2nd through 4th. They had Al Unser, Rick Mears, and Jeff Brabham. That's a name I haven't heard in a minute. Jeff Brabham.
Howdy Holmes is a fun one.
Yeah. So, but
it wasn't really close. It won by 11 seconds.
11 seconds, yeah.
Now they're up each other's butt all race.
Well, yeah, I mean, for the most part, absolutely. The racing is a lot closer since they've gone to the spec stuff. I call it spec car, just like I call that with IndyCar, NASCAR, V8 supercars out there in Australia. I call them spec cars because that's what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, but now let's kind of dive in a little bit. We had NASCAR this past weekend. They were at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. They had 3 races that week last weekend. They had the trucks, Xfinity Cup, your normal suspects. Friday night, I don't know if either one of y'all watched the truck race. That was the cleanest truck race I've watched in like 2 or 3 years out of the truck series. They had green flag pit stops in the 3rd stage.
That's unheard
Almost unheard of. Yeah,
Yeah.
since they've gone to the stages.
Yeah, since I've gone to the stages, they had green flag pit stop. I just wanted to let that sink in for everybody. Raja Karuth won the pole. Kyle Busch took an early lead, and then he
Fell.
battled tight issue all night long. He finished he fell dramatically. He burned up that right front pretty quick, and his night went from bad to worse after that too. Bailey Curry spun on the Dale lap. Ty Majeski won stages 1 and 2. It was pretty uneventful for those first 2 stages other than that spin. Dean Thompson hit the wall hard at the beginning of stage 3. He hit the outside wall so hard on the right side of his race truck that the truck went up in the air. Like it took a hop. It was pretty intense. That brought out a caution. Then they began green flag pit stops with about 33-ish to go, 32 to go. And there were a lot of violations. There were three total pass-throughs. Ty Majeski, who dominated the night, had a speeding penalty. Nick Sanchez also had a speeding penalty. Taylor Gray had a commitment cone violation. And then the 7 truck, Kyle Busch, they had a safety violation on their pit stop. All of those related to pass-throughs under green really ended their nights if they were having a decent run. Caruth won the race. Through all the chaos and strategy that happened, he ended up winning the race. Big win for him, led 38 laps. Media is going to push this. I'm going to also just briefly mention it, and we'll move on with our lives. The 3rd African-American to win in a national touring series of NASCAR. Of course, you had Wendell Scott and Bubba Wallace for the other ones.
Cool I did enjoy Raja's interview where he's like, I was supposed to have homework tonight. Yeah.
Yes.
I did chuckle when I heard that.
He is a senior at Winston-Salem State, North Carolina. So he is still getting his degree. I'm not sure what it's in, but he is
good for him though. He seems like a fun character.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We saw in the Vegas race, Joe's pick for the Xfinity race was Austin Hill. I picked Chandler Smith. Neither one of them won, but Chandler Smith finished ahead of Austin Hill, so I was happy about that. Joe Gibbs Racing absolutely dominated Vegas for some reason in the Xfinity car. They really have their package down for Vegas. They're always really good there. Even though Chandler Smith didn't win the race, I think he finished like 3rd. Yep. Just absolutely dominated, but they couldn't get the handling of that car right after stage 2. They made too aggressive of a change, and they tried to go back on it, and the car just wasn't responding as well after that. Sam Mayer spun out early. I think it was like lap 3 or got caught up in a spin by Parker Retzloff. And then SVG was out with engine issues by lap 30. So not a good day for him. And John Hunter Nemechek took the win on the Saturday race. So
JGR
back to his dominating ways in the 20 car, just like last year. I mean, it's no surprise to anybody. But Cup race, Pennzoil 400. I thought, even though it was kind of a quote snoozer for a battle for the lead there, with Larson leading 181 out of the 267 laps that were ran Sunday, I thought was a great race. You saw a lot of comers and goers, a lot of battles throughout the field. You saw the groove go from low to high. I mean, it was a lot of variables there. Bubba Wallace finished 35th after the left front lug nut got stuck. Like they tightened it too tight. They couldn't get it to unlock, so they had to cut it out and replace. And that's how they changed the left front tire. They ended up finishing 35th. That's who I picked to win the race
because I killed his night.
Good. But he was running pretty decent before then. He was running top 10, top 15 a little bit. Didn't have quite the car in the race like he had in qualifying. Brad Keselowski, who was a dumpster fire in qualifying, started 25th, finished 13th. That was Joe's pick to win, but we know Joey Logano won from the front row. Seabell had troubles all day. He spun a couple of times, just couldn't quite get the car handling for him. Buscher blew a tire, or not blew a tire. He lost a tire going into turn 1. They had over a 10.5-minute red flag for them to replace the safer barrier there in turn 1 and get that repaired. But Larson swept the stages. I mean, pretty uneventful Cup race, pretty clean throughout the field, but What are your guys' thoughts on the racing for Vegas over the weekend?
For Vegas, I would actually say the last couple laps of that race were some of the most intense battling we saw the entire day up the front. The 45
absolutely. Outside of Larson and Kyle Busch battling.
Yeah. I am completely blanking on who's in the 45 now.
Reddick.
But
Reddick.
Reddick had a fantastic charge, and unfortunately, with the package the way it is, they keep trying to make changes to make the cars less aero dependent, and they end up doubling down on the aero dependence instead. So
Kyle was amazing to watch.
It was incredible. Get within a car length of the car in front of you, and Kyle Larson was just reading him before he knew what he was going to do.
Yeah.
And blocked the air, killed his runs just time and time and time again.
It almost kind of reminded me of like watching a GT3 race or an IndyCar race on an oval, right? I mean, just the way that he was able to aero block was impressive. And, you know, Reddick also had a nice, colorful interview at the end of that race, too, about his pit crew.
That he did.
Feel bad for Reddick.
I didn't hear that.
Same shit, different year. He told Regan Smith at the end of the race. Yeah. On Big Fox.
Yeah, that his team, and especially 2311 in general, have just been choking these pit stops so terribly. And I mean, as a driver, yeah, you're there to drive the car, but a lot of these races are won on pit road.
Right.
If his crew had stepped up one time, got everything done one time, he could be one step up further on the podium. He could have won that race.
I think that last pit stop, that was the deciding factor, I think, for me. I mean, obviously, because we're seeing, you know, a lot of these races come down to that final stop, because we saw Reddick was running the top 5 all day. If they would have executed that last stop flawlessly, like you said, Scott, I think we'd be talking about a different winner today. I really do.
And the crew chief was clearly doing his job, because Reddick's car just kept getting better and better and better and better as the runs went on. And by the time he was finally in a position to fight Kyle Larson for that dominating win, just
the car just
on the
died,
pit stop.
got tight. Yeah, and they killed him on the pit stop, which I think Billy Scott is the crew chief for that 45 car. I know he was the crew chief when Kurt Busch was around. I think he's still the crew chief for that car. I'm not 100% sure.
What's hilarious is the next day, I just scrolling through TikTok, and it's a pit stop video, and sure as shit, it's the test car of the 45, and it's a pit stop video. Like, they're practicing. I was like, that didn't take them long. You thought you had Monday to rest.
I mean, the pit crews, I mean, they work nonstop. I mean, it's 5, 6, 7 days a week, counting race day, that they're practicing these pit stops. They do not quit. And you know who is the innovator of that? I'm going to take a side note on this a little bit. Ray Evernham was the guy that innovated the present day pit crew, because prior to what Ray Evernham was doing, you would just have your mechanics, your guys in the shop. They would go over the wall every week to change the tires and everything. Ray Evernham innovated it to where instead of the road guy or the shop guys going over the wall, they put specific pit crews on staff to pit the car. So that way Ray Evernham could have gotten more out of his guys and the race shop to work on the race car to make the race car go faster. And so he started that whole thing of now what we have today with these athletes pitting the cars.
And for those of you who have never had the opportunity to go down on pit road and see these guys in action, they are built like brick shit houses.
They're former football players, wrestlers,
former football players, D1 athletes, basketball players, just from all across the board. And even the fuel guys are just
well, and the fuel
monsters.
Guys is usually your biggest guy on the pit crew typically. I think I accidentally bumped into one on pit road at IMS, which is very easy to do because, Scott, you know how narrow the pit lane is at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I accidentally bumped into him once for the Xfinity race, and he was carrying the tires on their little cart they've got where they carry four tires at a time. And that dude, I was like, who are you? He's like, I'm the gas man for the 4 car for JD Motorsports. I was like, what'd you play in college? Because I know these guys are typically athletes. He said, I was an offensive lineman. I said, you have a good day, sir.
Well,
Yeah,
each gas can's what, 110 pounds?
Something like that. They're insane. I think they're 100, 110 pounds.
And
when
they pick them up like they're fucking nothing.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, they toss them around with one hand. Like
and even the jackman's got to be in pretty good shape because that jack weighs. I mean, I know they used to weigh like 50 or 60 pounds because they would just take a shot.
Yeah, I think they're right around 25, 30 now.
Yeah, they're still not light by any stretch, and they're also kind of having to do some multitasking too because they kind of carry one of the tires at times. So there's a lot going on a pit stop, and these guys are putting these cars now because of the single lug nut in less than 10 seconds.
I mean,
like they've got this down to a choreography.
If it wasn't for how long it takes the gas to get into the car, they'd be done in 5 or 6 seconds, maybe 7.
I would say you're still gonna get the 9-10 seconds because you have 20 gallons to force into that car.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you didn't have the gas,
right?
I still think they would. I think it'd be 7-8 seconds for sure at probably max. I've always been saying until they go to air jacks like you see in the IndyCar series and IMSA, you're still gonna see
the cars are too heavy for that.
You would be surprised. With those smaller cars, you need smaller jacks, but with a 3,400 pound stock car, there's a lot of room to hide some hydraulics.
Yeah, especially in today's Cup cars, you could. I don't know about the Xfinity car or the truck necessarily, but definitely in today's Cup car, you could.
Just to kind of go off on a tangent here, because we've been talking about NASCAR making all these terrible decisions, doubling down on them. I had a thought while we were talking about fuel.
That's dangerous.
And I think it would be funny to see, just to see how it would turn out. Pack the cars with a set amount of fuel to make it through the entire race.
Like what F1 does?
Like F1 does. It would be completely impractical. The cars would probably weigh close to 4,500 pounds.
The whole car is gas. The whole
car is
right.
gas. I feel like that would be entertaining as hell to see them try just one time.
You'd have a Romain Grosjean situation if that wreck happens like lap 2 or 3 of the race.
What's that mushroom cloud over there for? NASCAR race?
Engulfed in flames.
A giant mushroom cloud.
I mean, I was in Kentucky at Kentucky Speedway. I think it was 17 or 18. We had that truck catch fire in the parking lot.
Yes.
We've got a giant mushroom cloud coming over the turn 1 stands.
Jesus.
I will tell you that was terrifying in the moment. Standing on pit road, working my stall. For those of you that don't know, I worked at Kentucky Speedway as a firefighter EMT. I've done a little bit of everything involved with the job: on-track response, EMS, and pit road, garage, and fuel island firefighter. So,
needless to say, you've done it all.
I've done everything inside the bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is going to kind of wrap up the show here. I hate to cut off the conversation that we've been having, but I kind of wanted to keep this as briefly as we could. We did an excellent job, I think. I don't know how far along we are into the podcast before edits here, but wanted to get you guys' final thoughts for the weekend. Just before we get into everything, is there a particular race you're looking forward to? I know I'm looking forward to the IndyCar race because it's one of their marquee events. I know it's not the Indy 500, but St. Pete, I think that's going to be a fantastic race. I'm looking forward to see how Penske's going to do because I am a Newgarden guy, as you can tell. Background here. Big Newgarden fan. Have been since he was driving for Sarah Fisher, so don't even try to tell me that I'm not a Newgarden fan.
Okay, we're not Joe.
Yeah. But kind of curious to see how they're going to do this year on like the road and street course side. They've been kind of struggling, so I hope that they've picked up their program a little bit. I know a lot of people are looking forward to Ganassi and what Pelot's doing. But I'm kind of curious to hear y'all's thoughts. What are y'all looking forward to this weekend?
I'm definitely looking forward to IndyCar as well. NASCAR has put on surprisingly some really good shows the past couple of weeks, with the exception of, I believe it was the Atlanta truck race, ended up being a pretty nasty wet fart. Um, oh, AJ, what are your thoughts? What are you looking forward to?
Hold on. Well, I'm also looking. Okay, I'm also looking forward to St. Petersburg. The only thing that bothers me with the start of the IndyCar season is it starts now and then they take almost a month off.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like
I think
it's like they
that's
can
been
have
kind of
such a
bothering IndyCar
great
fans
race.
for years.
They can
Yeah.
have such a great race, and all the momentum from a great race at St. Pete is gone.
You got to bottle it up. You got to bottle it up for the next one. That I think I hear you there, because a lot of fans have been saying that for years, of how they have race one, and back in the day it was at Homestead before they went back to St. Pete, because this was in the middle of the split, where the IRL would start at Homestead and then they had to take like a month off before their next race. Like, it would be ideal, like, even if you wanted to go back to, say, Homestead, right? I know Joe's going to say, oh, it's not a very good track because of the progressive banking, yada, yada, yada. And he'll go back and listen to this and probably rip me for this one. But even if you wanted to have two races start in the state of Florida, you go from St. Pete one week, you go to Homestead the next, and then I don't know, some track on the West Coast after that, I guess.
Why don't
just to keep the momentum going, because
hit the
like
Daytona
you said,
road course
you hit
With the
you hit
NASCAR chicanes.
with the NASCAR chicanes. Yes, you'd have to do that. Absolutely, you'd have to do that. But I mean, you've got to do something to where you can keep that momentum riding, no matter how good the race is from St. Pete, just to let the people know, hey, we're back.
Yeah, because Gary, you know, I like IndyCar. I like watching IndyCar, but it's like, hey, that was a great St. Pete's race, and then I forget about it until the Indianapolis 500.
It's almost like we have St. Pete, Indy, and then we end at Laguna Seca, and everybody forgets the races that happen in between sometimes.
But
And
I think that month screws everything up.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, when we take the break for the Olympics, NASCAR's taking a 2-week break. IndyCar actually ends up taking a 4 or 5-week break in the middle of the summer.
Doesn't
before
F1 do the
they
same
hit.
thing?
I'm not sure how
F1
long of a break they
does.
take, but they take like a 2-week break or a 3-week break. But
I
they
think
don't
it's
take.
I
it was
think
a
it's a
month.
2 to 3 week break.
That's in like October or November. That's after the Olympics, so I think.
Yeah, the longest break they get is in the off season.
Yeah, pretty much.
The summer break, as they were calling it, was more for them to go from basically east to west, because they're circumnavigating the globe
Multiple
with that
times.
series. Yeah, multiple times. So giving everybody in each organization some time to have some downtime,
And
as
rest
opposed
and
to just
recharge. Yeah.
going and going and going.
Because that's the thing with Formula One, you're going across the world, where in NASCAR and IndyCar, mostly you're just going from one side of the country to the other. It's not too bad for us in comparison to what Formula One does when they go across Europe. And, well, frankly, across the world, because they do have a couple of races here in the
I
United
figured
States,
F1 would like, I understand their schedule on, let's not just all do North America races now, but it's like they'll go from over there to Miami, then back over there, do like 4 or 5 races, then they'll go to
Coda, and then they'll go race a race or two, and then they'll go back to Vegas. It's like
not for
you
nothing.
could at least do Coda and Vegas back to back, I think.
Or not back to back. You go do Mexico in between.
Yeah, or Canada.
Well, I would say
be an easy hop.
I would say run Canada the same time you do Miami, because it's the same time zone.
The same frame of the schedule. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I see where you're going with that. But hey, what the hell do we know? We don't know anything. So.
We're just fans, and I'm still butthurt about the Las Vegas. It's like, oh, it went green at like 1:30.
Yeah, that's one thing I wasn't a fan of. Like, we had to prepare for all the people overseas, yet we have to prepare for that. Like, nah, y'all suck it up. Y'all watch the race at 6 a.m. like we have to every once in a while.
Hey, not
It-
not just plug in nerds or whatever, but we just had Elimination Chamber for WWE. It was 5 a.m. over here. It's reverse. Everything is always over here.
That is true.
It's
That's
reverse. They actually let us, hey, wake up at 5 a.m.
Or
Yeah,
you
'cause
do
you
what
have
most people did, and like what we did on our team at Hutsport, we just said, "Screw that, we're gonna watch it at like 7 o'clock that night."
Yeah, I was up at 5 a.m.
the
You brave
one
soul.
thing I will say is the people who live in Singapore are gonna want our numbers after this because they've been doing that ever since they've had their race.
Oh shit!
That's true.
Shit.
Because Singapore is way, somewhere. Yeah, but I don't even know where they're at. Middle East, just put a glass over them. That's what Joe says.
I don't know.
Just put
I
glass
thought
over them.
Singapore was more of an Asian. Nah, whatever.
Who knows?
Geography in the U.S. education system, everybody.
Yep.
I know
Yep.
I know where Italia is. This was fun. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up now. Hopefully we don't get canceled on AJ's channel, but thank you, AJ, as always, for hosting us here for the Off of Turn 1 podcast. This is an All-Star 15 TV production. For Scott, for AJ, myself, Gary, y'all have a good night. Stay classy, stay safe. Don't be stupid in the chat like Scott, and don't play in traffic.
Wow, 2 digs at me.
Bye, everybody.
Make fun of the guy that got hit by the car. Okay.